broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Tibor Tote. It looks like we're still waiting for a few folks to join, so we might just give it another minute or two. Although, want to thank everyone for joining our webinar. We're really excited to talk about this new Bridges program, and very pleased to have actually Steve Pike here, our CEO, to make the opening remarks, introduction, as it were. I don't know, maybe we just give it a few more minutes. I think not everybody shows up on time, but we've got maybe, oh, I see the numbers like ticking up as we speak, Steve. So I was thinking we give it to 3:05, so that's just one more minute.
Sounds good.
For just want to make sure everyone's in the right place. So this is Mass CEC's webinar about our new Bridges program, which you'll find all about in just a minute. This presentation that I'll walk through will end up being posted. If we're able to successfully master the technology here, we may also be posting the recording of the webinar. So if you or others miss part of it, or if there's someone else that you want to share this with, you'll have a chance to do so. And I guess Steve, sticking to my, let's start at 3:05. Why don't you kick things off now, and hopefully if any other stragglers come in, they'll just catch up.
That sounds good. Terrific. Well, thank you, Tibor. And thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. First off, want to express my hope that you and your families, colleagues, and what have you are all faring reasonably well during what are certainly unsettling and challenging times. Mass CEC has adjusted reasonably well and has been firing on virtually all cylinders, at least those that young kids and school children will permit their parents to fire on. But speaking of firing on all cylinders and challenges, certainly business has been disrupted. I know for probably virtually everybody on this call. I would be surprised if anybody hasn't seen some degree of disruption. As you know, soon after the emergency orders and advisories, the executive orders and the like, shutting down businesses went out, we reached out pretty quickly to investment portfolio companies, technology development companies as well, trying to get a sense of how folks were faring and what Mass CEC might be able to do to help out during these times. And not surprisingly, many of you responded that one thing we could do was help companies extend runways because they had by and large shortened rather unexpectedly and rather abruptly. And so, while we were having those conversations with many of you, we were also taking a look at, the federal programs that at that point had been put out, and certainly many of them fell, all of them fell well short of providing assistance to startups. That's been remedied a bit by the PPP program, which I hope most, if not all of you, have tried to take advantage of. But even that has left a number of gaps, and in many cases significant gaps for companies such as yourselves. So recognizing that, Tibor and others at Mass CEC, immediately put their heads together and started to think of what kind of program we might be able to stand up to support as many of you as as we can. Um, Understanding that while certainly this pandemic is very acute and very dramatic, quite frankly, all of us are working to solve an equally pressing problem, which is climate change. And so many of you are working on technologies, market development efforts and the like that are really critical to helping us in that effort. Technologies that are really building blocks to, I suppose, pull from today's headlines. Really building blocks of frankly the vaccines that we are going to need to flatten and reverse the climate change curve. So we can't afford to take our foot off the pedal at this point, and so our aim is to help as many of you as we can to maintain that momentum and keep your businesses going through this time. So with that, just real quickly before I turn it over to Tibor, a few thanks, and the first certainly goes out to Tibor and John, as well as Ian on the investments team at Mass CEC for the work that they put in to date, and certainly the work that they'll put in the coming weeks and months on this program, as well as Galen Nelson, Ariel Horowitz in our office, who have pitched in, Jen Deloisio and John Hitt as well. I also want to thank our board of directors. They've been extremely supportive of this program. As many of you know, Mass CEC tends to spend quite a bit of time in program development, making sure that we have it right. We don't have that time in this case, and so ensuring that our board was comfortable with what we're proposing here was really critical, and across the board, while asking a number of challenging questions, they were across the board very supportive of this program just a couple of weeks ago when they approved it. So thanks to them as well. And then lastly, but certainly not least, and this Tibor will touch on a bit more, just want to give a quick shout out to Carmichael Roberts and Libby Wayman at Breakthrough Energy Ventures. Breakthrough has come on to match some of the support that we're providing, and nearly doubling the dollars that we're able to provide through this program. We're really grateful to Carmichael and Libby for the work they put in, and yet again the quick turnaround that we saw from Breakthrough and evaluating the opportunity and approving their own funding. So again, thank you. I really do hope you are all well. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Tibor to dive into the details.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. I guess first off, just glancing at the attendee list, I feel like I'm, this is actually sort of a family gathering that, so many of you folks by definition are already part of the Mass CEC family, already know most of you, and you're all already somewhat familiar or very familiar with Mass CEC, and we have a slide deck here I'm going to walk through that'll be posted afterwards. This once I run through this, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. There's in the controls within GoToWebinar, probably everybody's pretty familiar with these online video webinar controls, but there's a box for asking questions, there's a chat box, but if you have questions, I'll run through the slides, but go ahead and ask your questions as we talk through. And at the end, we'll have some good amount for Q&A, and I'll try to address whatever questions I can from the list, as well as, I don't know if we can figure out live question asking, but you can kind of raise your hand and we can try to do that. But I think I'll steer you to try to ask questions through the question box on the control panel. Would be, I think, the most effective way to do that. There'll also be, and I'll again talk about this during the presentation, but there will be a website, masscc.com/bridges, and that's where we'll end up posting everything, materials and information, FAQ, etc., for this program, and sending emails to bridges@masscc.com will be the best way to ask questions as you follow up after today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and walk through the presentation. Okay, so what is the Bridges program? So we've developed this program. We're calling it Bridging Recovery for Innovators Driving Green Energy Solutions, or Bridges. It's as Steve, I think, very well described. What we see are innovation portfolio companies experiencing. I don't need to spend too much time talking about all the disruptions that's happening in your business, in your operations, and accessing labs and workspaces and manufacturing space, and disruption with suppliers, disruptions with customers and potential customers, and trying to either generate new sales or installing or servicing customers, even if there's demand, which you've probably seen weakened as well. And then the big piece that we're helping to try to fill here with the Bridges program is access to financing. And certainly investors and traditional investors, many have backed away, perhaps even some of your existing investors, let alone new investors. And as Steve described, the federal loan programs that the SBA has put out, many work very well, but are still inadequate or insufficient and not well suited for startup companies like yours. So the Bridges program is designed to support startups like yourselves that are advancing critical technologies that are helping to further the goals of MassCC. And we see this as a way to provide I guess, somewhat of a safety net to startups like yours to preserve the jobs, to preserve the business activities, the accomplishments to date and yet to come, and to attract capital, not just our own, but really help you attract additional capital. And then, as Steve mentioned, I'll talk more about, we've also reached out to our network and have a commitment from Breakthrough Energy Ventures to help support this bridge investment effort. So this funding is available exclusively to companies, startup companies that have already received funding from MassCC through our investments and innovation grant programs. And that's specifically on the investment side, the programs that my team and I manage in our seed investment program that used to be called Accelerate Mass, through our equity investment programs, and through our venture debt program. On the innovation grant side, many of you are coming from having worked with our tech dev team and have received and are working on Catalyst grants for proof of concept projects, Innovate Mass demonstration grants, Amplify Mass as matching funds, and Deploy Mass for the early adopter support that we provide there. In addition, this is for companies that have been severely and adversely impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, but who at the same time, where they have a need for funding, yet are viable with this funding and other support that we can help catalyze and that you're able to draw upon, that can get through at least 6 months of runway and hopefully much longer than that, including our funding. So here's the opportunity. So the $1.5 million that we've been talking about, and I've already received some questions about that. That is the total funding, not the funding per company. So sorry to disappoint some of you. And in fact, so we have allocated $1.5 million of funds from MassCC, which we would hope to be able to spread around as needed to the companies that have the strongest need and merit and fit for Mass CEC. So we can invest up to $100,000 of our funds per company. So we'd be spreading that between 15 to 30 companies. This commitment from Breakthrough Energy Ventures, they've committed additional $1 million to invest in those companies selected by Mass CEC. And so you're applying to Mass CEC for this funding. And then we are working on our side with Breakthrough Energy Ventures to offer an opportunity for them to invest additionally in those companies that we select for the Bridges program. They actually also would be maxed at $100,000 per company. So a total of $2.5 million that has been pulled together here to support what will probably end up being somewhere between 15 to 30 companies. We are talking to other investors, no other commitments at this point. We're not signing up to do a full syndication of this, but we thought that if we can on the front end find folks like Breakthrough Energy Ventures who want to back Mass CEC and our portfolio of really innovative, impactful companies, and this effort that we have to help bridge companies through this crisis, we set out to do that. And again, Breakthrough has been very supportive and very excited to help Mass CEC in this effort and hopes to make a big impact like we do on innovative startups like yourselves in this sector. The funding is limited, and we are expecting that we'll have more applications than we will be able to fund. At the same time, there's no commitment that all the funding from us or from Breakthrough or anyone else will be dispersed through this program. We do encourage you to, like I'm sure you've done with SBA and other sources, apply for what you can, but do not rely on receiving funding. So you need to explore all opportunities from investors, from customers, from within your own operations, including cost-cutting measures and so forth. And I think this will end up being, for most companies, an exercise in having to juggle lots of different trade-offs and resources in order to not just get through the crisis, and really what we're trying to do is to allow companies to, yes, first and foremost, preserve the value of what you've been creating, what you've been working on, but also to continue to make progress and hopefully come through this in a much stronger position. So the structure of this investment is that we are making the investment as a unsecured convertible note, 5-year convertible note that will accrue interest, that will convert with the principal upon a qualified financing or at maturity in 5 years. So this is meant to be long-term capital. This is not a cheap loan. This is, yet this is still a relatively cheap form of equity. We are posting the term sheet on the website as well, and you'll see the terms, which are fairly company friendly from in terms of discounts and conversion caps and so forth. In fact, there would be no conversion cap. But the idea is that this is a source of capital if you need it, that does not need to be repaid, but instead converts into kind of permanent capital along with your equity to really support the long-term growth of the company. So awardees then, and I really touched upon this already, we'd love for you to be able to capitalize this investment and catalyze your own network of investors, existing or even new investors, to really either match our funds directly, our term sheet and no purchase agreement are open to others coming in on the same terms to catalyze a larger round. We would be expecting to close first to bring you the funding as soon as we can, but then you can build from there to provide maximum support for your business. So the timeline of what we're doing here, the applications will open on May 1st and will be open until May 15th. So really there's 15 days to submit an application. There is no real advantage to submitting early in that these applications will be, we'll start to review them as they come in, but there will be no decisions made until we have gathered the full pool of applications. And we will be really from that deciding not just which companies are eligible, but which companies have the strongest need, merit, and fit with MassCC goals and with Breakthrough Energy Ventures goals. From those applications after the May 15th, our goal is to have them reviewed, vetted, and our internal approval and decision process completed by around June 15th. Hopefully Steve is not glaring at me right now, but I think that's a deadline that we'll try to keep. But I did put whatever the squiggly line there to show that this is a goal that we have, and we'll do our best to kind of stay on track with that timeline. On the other hand, because we are expecting a large number of applications, and we'll talk in a moment about what the application includes, we're not going to be able to hunt people down for missing information or incomplete applications. And so you really need to be sure to provide as complete and correct an application as possible, or else that could significantly harm your likelihood of receiving an award. We're not, we may not be able to, again, follow up with everyone if there's missing information, but we'll do what we can to make sure that we have what we need as we process them. So the evaluation criteria, I've been using this phrase of need, merit, and fit. Again, first, we need to see that there has been a negative impact on your business, that there is a funding need, yet balanced with the impact of our investment making a difference and getting you through the crisis, being that gap to help you be successful through this crisis. At the same time, the merit side of it is really evaluating both business, technology, team, market, and clean energy impact, and alignment with the goals of MassCC and this Bridges program. There'll be trade-offs that we'll have to make, I'm sure, in terms of which companies have the greatest need or merit or fit with our goals. I would say the ideal candidate is a company that has been able to demonstrate that the technology works, that it's innovative and scalable, that there's already been some sort of market validation, product market fit, potentially revenues, but not necessarily, but that nevertheless we can be comfortable that there's a significant market need, market opportunity, significant commercial opportunity, and that the team is in place that's needed to execute on the business plan. And if there are resources needed down the road, that they're sort of identified kind of what the capability and limits are of the current team, what's needed to be successful. But we really want to, and that would be the ideal candidate, where, and to whatever extent all of that can be validated through the application, that would be really very strong. And then on the clean energy impact, this is generally measured in terms of potential greenhouse gas emission reduction or mitigation through whatever sort of clean energy technology, the fit side of, and typically we're looking for companies that can mitigate millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So there really needs to be a significant impact there. And also part of the considerations on the fit side are that Mass EC is an agency, and within the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's a real priority and focus areas around clean transportation, net zero grid, offshore wind, and built environment, or really reducing energy use in buildings, or seeing that that's provided from renewable sources. The application itself, there's a lot that we're asking for, but that will allow us to make all these determinations that we need to allocate these funds. And so hopefully much of it is material that's already available, including executive summary on the business, current or very recent pitch decks. If you haven't already, we do want you to go through and really try to project your climate impact, ROI for customers, team resumes and capabilities. There'll be a fair amount of analysis on the financial side. We're looking for a 12-month budget to evaluate the need, the viability, and how you plan to use the Bridges funds. We want to understand your fundraising plans, and we'll be reviewing both historical financials and sort of broader revenue and other projected financials as well. I will just reiterate here that the application itself, as well as solicitation and FAQ documents, will be posted at massec.com/bridges by Friday, not sooner. We encourage you to review all those materials thoroughly before applying and before trying to reach out to ask any questions. We'll do our best to be responsive to questions that come in through the email bridges@massec.com. But we, again, based on the expected volume and expedited timeline, there's no guarantee that we'll be able to answer all the questions or help companies fix any sort of incomplete or inaccurate applications. But we will be as responsive as we can. So with that, we are open for questions now. I don't see that anyone has asked any questions, although I will, I know John, so I will also introduce my team, by the way. John Gorman is my associate, Ian Campbell, my analyst. Josh Goodwine is my fellow. We actually, by the time the end of these applications are due, we have a new investment principal joining us, Dylan Arnold, and he'll be joining us by May 11th. So that's the sort of complete investments team that will be reviewing the applications and processing them. So you will be hearing back from one of us as we go through the process. And let's have it open to any questions now. Let's see.
So Tibor, I've been going through and answering
Okay.
some questions on the question pages as we're going, but we have a couple outstanding ones here.
All right. Let me see if, okay. I undocked it and see if that helps. Okay, you can see how you've been answering questions. So one interesting, question. I mean, we'll see that the basic terms of the of our term sheet. Again, we'll be posting the term sheet. We'll be posting the slides that I just ran through on the website, again at masscc.com/bridges. The term sheet does have a provision of so the basic terms of the term sheet are that it is a 5-year convertible note with a 5% accruing interest, that it is convertible upon a qualified financing automatically, or optionally upon any equity financing or at maturity. The Breakthrough has agreed to sign on to the same terms as Mass CEC, so if they, but they have their own independent review that they want to undertake on the fit for Breakthrough, but they would intend and hope to put their full $1 million to work in the whole effort. Again, we're hoping that the next couple of weeks we get and expecting a strong round of applications, and we'll be able to allocate all the funds, the full $2.5 million, towards the companies that apply for it, and we'll make decisions by middle of June and get the money out as soon as possible thereafter. The terms that we're offering are meant to be essentially cookie cutter. So by being very simple, we also are not planning to negotiate these terms. So if you're interested in the term sheet, you essentially need to be prepared to sign up the deal as written. If you apply, obviously you'll have a chance to accept the award or not if you if you are selected for an investment. In addition, I think I mentioned earlier, there's no conversion cap, and there's a tiered discount. So if you have a qualified financing in the next 6 months, it would convert at no discount, 0%. If you have a qualified financing between 6 to 18 months, it would be a 10% discount, and a qualified financing after 18 months would be at a 20% discount. One other thing I should point out, because there's been some questions about existing rounds, is we do have a provision in there, essentially a most favored nations provision, so that if you do close on a bridge within the next 6 months, you would agree to provide any more favorable terms to the bridge's investment as you do with other investors. And so this on our end allows us to say, okay, we'll just go in first and make our investment, but if you achieve another bridge on different terms that are more favorable to the investor, you would share those terms with us as well. Let's see what some of the other kind of open questions are. So technically, the amount that you can apply for, again, from Mass CEC is up to $100,000. There's no minimum amount per se, so we're open to sort of filling the need that you have. There's a maximum amount, actually. Both, I think the $100,000 cap would be the overriding cap, but we've also said that we would fund no more than a quarter's worth of kind of your most recent quarter or your highest quarter of operating expenses. Although I think for most companies, other than maybe some of the early stage companies that may have less than a run rate of $100,000 a quarter. Otherwise, ideally, again, since we're using our terms, we will have a full set of documents drafted by the time we make the awards, and hope to be able to disperse the funds by the end of June as well. So from the decision, be able to put the money, certainly be starting to invest those funds, the cash out as soon as possible. Let's see what some of the other questions are here. So, from a fit standpoint, water itself is not something that we are prioritizing or focusing on these days. So there would need to be a significant kind of energy or carbon emissions benefit to be kind of attractive for this program. We are not, given the time and volume of applications, we are not planning on having any face-to-face pitches, but that's also why it's a fairly robust application. So if you have received or expecting to receive PPP money, that's great, and that absolutely can help to support the viability of the company and your ability to get to 6 months of runway with our funding. So it's really open. I know the formula for PPP loans are theoretically up to 8 weeks of runway. Although for a lot of growth companies, that's calculated. I mean, weird things about the calculation of last year's average, and if you've been a growing company over the last year, for some companies, it's maybe only 4 to 6 weeks of runway. Another issue, on the need side, there are several people asking about, what's the need. I think the need can be both in terms of that you can describe, and we're not necessarily looking for, and we're not looking for like affidavits from customers who would have placed orders but you need to be able to describe how your business and business plan were adversely affected by the current crisis. You need to be able to demonstrate, and if you have 18 months of cash runway today, you're not really a candidate for this. I mean, this will be allocated to those companies that are most in need of the funding, yet again can show that they're viable with the funding, it's frankly a relatively low bar to be able to say that your business has been impacted, but you should be able to have a sort of understandable explanation on kind of what that impact has been. So there would be Breakthrough Energy Ventures is making an independent investment, but they are relying on MassCC's application and evaluation and selection process. So ultimately, if you've ever done a convertible note round, this will look very similar. We'll have a note purchase agreement that MassCC and Breakthrough would both be a party to, but each investor would receive its own convertible note, promissory note. And so Breakthrough would be a direct investor. It's not a pooled investment vehicle or something. And to that extent that any other investors are interested in also joining the round, they may. And so there's no cap on if you have any investors, existing investors or others who've been interested in your business, they can piggyback onto the same structure, share the same contract from a note purchase agreement, that we would invest together, but then every investor gets its own note. The information is going to be posted and with links that you can download these documents directly from our website, and then you would submit the application and attachments in an email to that bridges@masscec.com application. What is it? So, if you don't have, again, the structure of it is a convertible note that will mature in 5 years and would convert upon a qualified financing. If you don't have a qualified financing, because your business never needs one, it would still convert upon at our option, and if Breakthrough is also an investor at their option upon any equity financing or at the 5-year maturity. And if at our option we do not decide to convert at maturity, then the note becomes due and payable with accrued interest at the end of maturity. I'm quickly skipping down. I'm sure I've missed a few questions. The way we're going to choose the award amount will be based on the number of applications that we select to invest in, the amount of funding that's available. So if there are really 20 to 30 companies that we really want to support and have demonstrated sufficient need and merit, we will be paring back the amount that we can invest in each company. Yet we will also want to make sure that we're investing enough to be kind of meaningful and meet the needs. So there'll be a little bit of a balancing act there that we still need to sort through how that's going to work. But let's say at a minimum, our plan would be that we're investing in at least 15 companies, and the funding can therefore be with breakthrough funding could be as much as $200,000 combined, but would probably be, if we're spreading it over a larger base, somewhere between $75,000 to $150,000 per company to be able to support enough companies. Someone asked about the eligible programs. It is not available to companies that have only received kind of internship funding, because those are not based on a haven't gone through a evaluation process, more just an eligibility process. So part of, as Steve talked about in the beginning of the call, the support that we have from our board members, we're in speaking with our board members prior to the approval, it was important to the board that, or important to members of our board, that we are investing in companies that we have made some sort of determination about the merit of the business, have experience working with the company in some capacity, and really through our investment programs or through our innovation grants, again, the Catalyst, Innovate Mass, Amplify Mass, or Deploy Mass, only companies that have received funding through one of those programs are eligible for this. let's see, skipping around here a little bit. So there is not an option to just pay back the debt before qualified financing round. So this is a, in that sense, a potentially dilutive financing. This is not a just a straight loan. You know, in terms of kind of how the factors will be weighed, I mean, it really is a balanced combination of, I mean, it's very important to us that we are backing truly innovative companies that we feel have very high potential commercially and very high potential on making a meaningful climate impact, clean energy impact. So in some ways, maybe all of those need to be present. It's not just a one factor or another in order to receive an award from this program. We have set some limits on how the proceeds of there are three areas in which we've set limits on use of proceeds, and slightly different than how kind of SBA limits are, where we are actually saying that in order to be comfortable that our funding is going into the company and being spent on the business, we have a prohibition if you accept our funding that for the next 6 months you will not that you will not spend any money, whether from technically our funding or elsewhere, to pay back principal on debt, to make any payments to shareholders other than compensation of employees who may be shareholders, and that there's a hard cap on compensation to employees. And so the hard cap would be you agree that you would not pay any employee more than $12,000 a month to make sure that there's enough excess cash to fund the business and fund the runway while we're in that first critical 6-month period. I mean, there's a lot of people are asking about the fit. I mean, ultimately the greatest measure of fit will be perhaps is on the clean energy or climate impact side. I mean, does this business have the potential to offset or mitigate millions of tons of carbon emissions? That's sort of the first and foremost. Ideally, and so the ideal candidate would maybe be fitting within one of our focus areas, within, again, clean transportation, buildings, grid, or renewables, where in the renewable space, a big effort today are applications or technologies that can support offshore wind. But we're certainly open outside of that to other kind of meaningful technologies that are significantly have a significant climate impact or significantly reducing the use of energy, increasing efficiency, really enabling a vision of electrifying energy use in buildings and transportation, greening the grid, making it more efficient, reducing the cost, and allowing for what's moving towards a more decentralized distributed grid. And so falling within that is really necessary for this vision. So we do expect that you would be able to service loans in terms of paying interest expense on existing loans, but we don't want our money going out to pay back principal on loans. So it's really only for principal payments. This question list keeps flipping back to the top. So I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. And I probably have missed some questions along the way. I see a question here. Are you still looking for other venture partners? If so, would the total funding pool or maximum amounts be increased? Yes, so we actually are still looking for other venture partners. If you have some that you think would be interested in this, please send them directly to me. The total funding pool or maximum could be increased then if we had other venture partners. Not the funding from SEC is fixed, that we have board authorization to invest up to $1.5 million, up to $100,000 each per company, and that won't change or increase. But if we could get, in addition to Breakthrough, $1 million from Breakthrough, if there are other investors that come in, we do have other investors currently thinking about it. No one else that has firmly committed, but that would then increase, and the relationship we would have then with those investors who sign on to back Mass CEC in the Bridges program would be for them to gain access to the application materials of those companies that we select for an award. So part of the application is actually giving your consent for us to share this with other potential co-investors. You can elect not to have that opportunity if you don't want, if you just want Mass CC funding, but if you want to have the opportunity to have additional funds, then we would be sharing this with other investors. And they can, who may have, like Breakthrough, their own concept of what's a good fit. I don't expect that Breakthrough will invest in every company that we select, but they've assured me that they will be kind of very open to working with companies that we recommend. John, if you're sort of watching the thread, are there any other kind of major questions you think that I should address now? I guess one question on the funding amount is that you do need to request, and maybe everybody is going to ask for $100,000, but you do need to specify how much up to $100,000 that you would want from Mass CEC, and any funding from Breakthrough will be over and above that if they do opt into that company. So you're really gaining an opportunity of companies that we select to be considered by Breakthrough for an additional investment, which they are also capping at $100,000 per company, and that would be over and above that. John, do you see any other sort of questions that I should speak to now?
I think that we have hopefully touched on most of the major themes. Folks, we apologize if we have not had the opportunity to answer your questions in full or in the manner which you would prefer. We will be posting, as Tibor mentioned, an FAQ along with our solicitation and application term sheet documents on the Bridges webpage, and we have put a lot of thought into those documents, so hopefully those should provide a significantly more clarity on some of these questions, hopefully all of them. And we request that folks definitely make use of those documents, definitely review those in depth. We do have a dedicated mailbox, as has been mentioned, for this program, bridges@massec.com. However, given the anticipated volume of applications, we can't make any guarantees that we're going to be able to respond to any and all inquiries. So please do, again, make use of those posted online resources to answer and troubleshoot as you're putting your applications together.
Yeah, and let me just add that there are a number of companies on the line I know have already received an investment from MassCC and are accustomed to working with us as an investor. But if you're work with our tech dev team, I mean, this is a different relationship. This is not a grant program, and this is not just a straight loan program. So as with all of our other investments, and hopefully some of the portfolio companies on the investment side on the line would agree, whenever we invest in a company, yeah, we see that as our duty to try to be as a value-added investor, to be of use, to help you succeed. And so the relationship that we have as an investor is different than the relationship that we have as a grantor. And so we're not looking for to have board rights or anything like that, but we would still want to have an active dialogue with the companies in our investment portfolio and have a much more holistic relationship with you and understanding the business and how we can be helpful and provide feedback, guidance, advice, serve as an investment banker, cheerleader, therapist at times to really be a resource and support to the management team, which is how we work with our investment portfolio companies, which hopefully others would support that claim on the line here. So we are otherwise at 4 o'clock now. So I think we'll take this as a time to wrap things up here. I do want to thank Steve Pike and the MassCC board again, that they've been great about supporting this initiative, supporting our effort to help backstop the really impactful, innovative, and hopefully very companies that have a big commercial opportunity. We want to see that you be successful, that you certainly live to fight another day, but hopefully can grow in that time period. And that's our real goal in offering this program is to, we don't want to see a bunch of startups struggle and disappear through this crisis. I mean, we really want to be a resource, help you be successful. As you've seen already through your existing relationship with MassCC, you really matter to us. We've made a decision to back you in some other capacity, and we want to keep doing that as best we can with the funds we have available for this. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining the line. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to hear from you through your application in the next couple of weeks if this is funding that will kind of be impactful and meaningful to you and your companies. So thank you very much, everybody.